People who understand your needs and are committed to helping you make it happen. At DKP & Co Chartered Accountants, we are more than just accountants. We are business advisors, taxation consultants, and strategists that specialise in setting up businesses. We understand the client and give them the very best customised advice and strategies to achieve their goals. Visit our website, dkpco.com.au, or give us a call today on 03 9023 9370. Fast, proactive, personal. That's DKP & Co Chartered Accountants.
Long throw, goalkeeper's come, hasn't got there. Harry Kewell, and then poked home by Tim Cahill. Australia have done it! 6 minutes to go, and it's a landmark moment for Australian football. Tim Cahill has scored the nation's first ever World Cup Finals goal.
You're listening to FNR, Football Nation Radio. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Hello again. An opportunity to talk about some of the stories that are making headlines in the game of football in Australia and around the world. My co-host is Lachie Flanagan, who's running the controls. And we've got a couple of special guests from the Macarthur Bulls. A little bit later on, we'll be talking to Sam Krslovic, who's the sporting director at the club. And he's probably wearing one of the biggest smiles in the pre-season. Would you think, Lachie?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say of all the A-League related sporting directors, I think he'd certainly be the cheeriest. He's, of course, the only one to make it to the final, the only early team to make it past the semis as well. Obviously, Brisbane got trounced. And I think there's been quite a few teams who have been upset along the path to the final where Macarthur have finally made it.
The Bulls came, United, played and won last night at what was the ground that saw nearly 6,000 people rock up?
Jack Edwards Reserve in Oakleigh, where I think
there was a grand final played at Jack Edwards only the other day.
It was at Olympic Village, the grand final, but Oakleigh played in the grand final. They, of course, won, beating South Melbourne 5-0 on the night.
So is that the best crowd of the NPL season?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I think from memory, the Sydney game in the round of 16 was something in the vicinity of 2-2. Then the Olympic Village game, I don't mean 2-2 is in the scoreline, or 2-2 is in 22. 2,200.
Yep.
And the Olympic Village...
It'd be nice if it was 20,200.
I was going to say 22 would be a bit underwhelming. The grand final at Olympic Village, I think the official figure that I received was 2,800. Last night was over 5,000. I think 5,400.
Look, there were tallies. I heard 5-4. I heard 5-8. Look, anywhere in that vicinity is fantastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way I put it to you before we went to air, George, is it wasn't just the biggest community sporting crowd that I've seen
in a while,
all year at Jack Edwards or all year in Victoria, but it was the biggest I'd seen 45 minutes before the game.
Yeah.
Like it had already sort of hit that mark. I mean, for those who don't know Jack Edwards, there is just one grandstand, and then there's kind of a hill on the opposite side to the grandstand, and then basically...
Had the kiosk run out of food and drink by that time?
No.
Or did it do very well and sustain everybody?
I think they stocked up. I saw a lot of people flying around with their souvlaki's in tin foil and the meat platters, all of which are very nice. I know that even a couple of the Macarthur players stopped off at the end of the game to tuck in. Particularly, it was quite funny. One of the players who did stop by, a lot of them had clearly been past the NPL Victoria traps before, because one of the Macarthur was supposed to have these sort of meal plans they were eating, but some stayed to eat the souvlaki at the end. One of them was Matt Miller, who's the younger brother of Hamish, who didn't play for Oakleigh last night, but is an Oakleigh player. They've got a big family.
And they know their way around. He
used to play for South Melbourne, and so he's like, I'm not missing this. And I did hear from someone else that Daniel Arzani left the ground saying that's the best food at an NPL ground I've ever eaten in my life. And look, I think Daniel Arzani is spot on. Jack Edwards, the meat there is very sharp.
Now, speaking of spot on, I understand that you left the ground crestfallen.
Well, you know me, George.
Yeah, I do, and that's why I keep saying to you, we don't always get what we deserve.
No, but I am a very, very fond and very sentimental of the.
You're a romantic.
Well, yes.
You're a football romantic.
Yes, and I like the cup set. The cup set is always a fun, exciting thing to me. I mean, it's become a bit sort of less exciting while it's been more in vogue. Like the bit of a hype has died down because it's been happening more often throughout this instalment of the
and there's a reason for that, because we've suddenly struck a formula that seems to be fair or fairer for the NPL clubs, and also puts a little bit more pressure on the A-League clubs to either get themselves fitter faster and get their squads up to what is, I suppose, war mode, and play on grounds that are sort of 50-50. They're not the billiard tables, and they ask a little bit more of the A-League players who are a bit more accustomed to those lovely surfaces where the ball doesn't stand up or bounce over your foot as you're about to drive it into the back of the net.
I mean, I think in the case of the surface at Jack Edwards, I mean, it's as good a deck, I think, outside of the A-League as you could possibly find. It's a little bit smaller, but the actual quality of the surface is top notch. But to be honest, I think
that's a great kudos to the council for the work that they do.
Yeah, no, the redevelopment work that's gone there, because it wasn't always like that. Is quite.
Do you think Chris Taylor, the coach of the Oakleigh Cannons, would be feeling a little bit disappointed, or would be crestfallen like you?
I don't know. It would be a very.
We're going to find out.
Yes, we will shortly. It would be a very bittersweet thing, I imagine, because as I discussed with someone from Oakleigh last night, yes, it would have been great to make the final and give themselves a good shot of winning it if it's an all-NPL affair.
Could you imagine that? Sydney United
and so it's,
up against Oakleigh
It's
Cannons.
Disappointing to go out in a big scoreline, to lose an important player in the way that they did at a crucial moment of the game as well. But if you go back to the start of the season, with all due respect, there's not a single NPL club in the state or in the country even who are going, when they're setting their objectives, I think we're going to win the Australia Cup. That seems like their primary objective this year was to win the NPL Victoria Championship for the first time, and that's what they did. So I think there'll be some immediate disappointment, but over the course of the season, they've made a national semi-final, they've made a state final in the Cup and in the league, which they eventually won, and that's the one that was the big one for them.
Okay, speaking of people in a good mood, would there have been anyone more excited than the young goalkeeper who ran on for the last few minutes for the Oakleigh Cannons?
Well,
we're going to find out how old he is, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been watching Twitter, and he's 13, 14 or 15, and he might even be 12 if you read early tweets. I want to find out from Chris Taylor, but we're going to confirm it. For those of you who are wondering, we're going to put it to bed. We're going to finally determine just how old young Eimer is. Young Abili is his, I think, his surname, and he came on in the last few minutes. And you know what? He wasn't beaten. And I think he's still wearing a smile, and he went back to school today. Can you imagine the stories to your schoolmates? Oh, mate, I knew I was going to play.
Yeah, well,
I knew I was going to play.
It was funny. You were asking who was the most excited person there. I think the only people more excited than him were the people watching him and realizing, because I was sitting
this is history, man.
I was sitting in the grandstand, and I was looking over there, and I was like, is he putting his socks on? Like, is he putting his boots on? And then two security guards or members of the coaching...
Only when he puts the gloves on as a goalkeeper, you know it's for sure.
Yeah, but while he was like getting kitted up, like two members of the coaching staff or of the security team were like standing in front of him clearly to cover him up. So like there was no... The hype didn't, explode.
Yeah,
but, it was incredibly exciting. I think.
What was the buzz like when he actually did make his entry onto the ground?
Oh, it was great.
Huge roar?
Yeah, absolutely. Even Macarthur, I think, were applauding as he came on, because it is exciting. We've had, I think, we've obviously got to confirm 100%.
He got to get a photo with Dwight York.
Yes, I saw the photo
Talk
being
about
taken.
special.
I was there when the photo was taken.
We should add he's also a Manchester United fan.
Oh, well, trying not to hold that against him. We've all been young and made mistakes before.
He may well have had some idea who Dwight York was or had been for the club.
Indeed,
because there aren't that many 14-year-olds that would be right across that.
But I was watching, he did another interview with 10. He's done more interviews than most people do in their lifetime in 24 hours. And he said, I didn't get to sleep until 2 a.m. because the adrenaline, well, half of it was adrenaline, the other half was his phone just exploding from all the missed calls, all the texts.
And I saw his mother. But beyond herself,
who legally had to be in the interview.
She's the guardian. Okay, are we going to catch up with Chris Taylor because I think we're almost ready to go. Let's find out. He wouldn't be in the best of spirits, but he should be very, very proud of the deeds of his team. Let's talk to the man who coached the Oakleigh Cannons in 2022, took them to the grand final, and also one game short of the final of the Australia Cup. Chris Taylor, welcome to FNR.
Thanks, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, we had you a couple of weeks ago, and we kept our fingers crossed, and I watched with great interest, and you guys came out of the blocks. You scored the opening goal. What were you thinking when that goal went in, Chris? Seriously, now you can tell us how you really felt because the game's finished. Come on.
Look, I mean, I was obviously hoping for the best result possible. And when you go in front, you think, well, if we can get another one, maybe it could be like Sydney. But
wow.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was quite disappointing in the end, conceding that many goals. And I felt if we hadn't have lost Aaron and we had have had Joe Knowles, who we lost to Brisbane a couple of days earlier, the result could have been different. But that's football for you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say there were mitigating circumstances to the scoreline. You lost your best organiser, is that fair, early in the game?
Yeah, well, look, if you analyse it in the grand final on Sunday, Aaron was judged best on ground, so he's in a rich vein of form at the moment. We're not conceding goals. He's a big part of that. He's probably one of the big leaders out there. So losing him was very, very tough to replace. Yeah.
Let's dwell on Aaron for just a moment. Is he living proof that confidence is a wonderful thing in sport?
Look, I think confidence goes a long way.
No. What I'm suggesting is that he's built up a wonderful vein of confidence based on a string of great performances that have led up to leading the team to this wonderful result in the NPL.
Yeah, look, I think that applies to the team as well. You know, once a team's confident or an individual's confident, they tend to play with that. Not the added pressure and that sort of thing. So Aaron's been very, very good the last 5 or 6 weeks for us, yeah.
I mean, and again, were you pleased, obviously, to concede the goals in the second half? There are mitigating circumstances, as we said. But again, in that first 45, particularly or similar to the game against Sydney, you guys weren't just, it wasn't a defend 11 men behind the ball kind of approach. You guys were really, really slick in possession. You guys were playing against an A-League opponent on your own terms. You must have been, even though the result didn't happen, delighted with the way that panned out, from that point.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there were good passages at play, and I thought we looked quite slick when we went forward. Our ground suits us. But like I say, that was probably the disappointing part for me, that we didn't back that up having done it in the last 4 or 5 games. But I do acknowledge that, things do change. I mean, the grand final on the weekend, South Melbourne had a lot of injuries, and it does affect teams. And I think we've probably become a victim of the amount of games we've played. And, dare I say, they've got, Macarthur have got some very good players. I thought we got some very ordinary decisions, but that's part of football as well. And probably we're due for a loss, but to concede the 5 was a bit disappointing. But it was a big night for the club, and obviously getting some of the young boys on in the last 5-10 minutes. And obviously the keeper, as you've been talking about, was something quite special. And
Chris Taylor, how old is he? Come on, let it out. I
think he's 13. To be honest with you, I think you're exaggerating when you say he's 14. I don't believe he's 14 yet. Yeah.
And he's definitely not 12. Is that correct?
No, he's not 12. He's definitely 13. Yeah.
Oh, I tell you what, the most wonderful thing about if they don't get fussed, if they don't get flummoxed too quickly, if they have a sort of demeanour that doesn't that shows you that they're very hard to ruffle, then you got something very special in your hands. I think it's a tremendous thing to give him half a dozen minutes to run on, to especially in front of the fans. How was he received, Chris? Because you were at the ground. I was watching on television. It was impressive, and it looks like they went wild. Did you feel very happy, or were you guarded and thinking to yourself, should I have done this, or should I do this?
No, look, I mean, I thought about it quite seriously, and I thought, look, it'll be good for the young boy.
Oh, bless you.
It'll be good for the club, and probably being the youngest player. But what was even more impressive, you saw all the supporters start applauding him when he came on.
Wow.
Even White York actually applauded him, which I thought was really good. And it's part of the spirit of football, I suppose. It was played in, the competition was played in, good spirits and that only added to it at the end.
What did you learn? What can we say now that the club and you as a coach has learnt or have learnt after what has been a terrific campaign? It didn't finish as you wanted, yes, but what have you learned? What do you think the players have learned or will learn from this wonderful experience and this great ride that has given the sponsors a huge lift and the club a great profile across the country?
Yeah, look, I think obviously, the confidence is the biggest thing, but as for saying that, I think it just gives you that bit of a taste and want to do better next year. I think the players will be the same. Once you've had that bit of a taste of it and you've seen what you can do, you actually start want to back in yourself all the time and want to win it next year,
Chris, I remember when we spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, just after the Sydney game, and I remember you talking about on that day, you were like, I was kind of disappointed. I was expecting it to maybe be the result beyond us, and so I could bring him on. And many people thought when you said that you were joking, but here we are 2 weeks later, and it actually happened. And as you said, the sort of exposure as well that it's brought to the club. I've seen it pop up everywhere from international outlets and everything.
Global. It's gone global.
Have you missed a career in marketing that we're not aware of or something?
I said it to our media people today. I said, we normally get about 5 or 6 likes on a Facebook post. I said, all of a sudden it's gone berserk. Maybe I'm in the wrong industry. Yeah.
No, you're not in the wrong industry. You're in the right industry, but you've done something that you've watched your players do, and that is they've come together, they've gathered themselves, and they've played in a fashion that you should be very proud of as their coach. And what's the hierarchy at the club? I know as a former president of a football club just how tough committees are. What's the feedback been, 24 hours on nearly?
Look, I think the club's absolutely delighted. They're talking about having, days, bring the whole club in, like a family day. And
how fabulous.
Stations and, talking about flying the grand final trophy in and stuff like that. So they want to appreciate the members of the club, and I think that's what it's all about. We're definitely a community club. We don't want to lose that little tag, but it's nice to see. We've got people there. It's 50th anniversary this year. We've got people that founded the club and have been there. Guys in the late 70s that are there every single night. And to see the joy on their faces, that's what makes football such a good thing at times.
You're right. It's the smile on their faces, the wonder in their eyes, and the opportunity to sit there and reflect on their journey too through those last 50 years. I've got to say also we should take this opportunity to thank you and congratulate you for winning the grand final.
Yeah, look, I think it was a big thing that the club's been so close so many times and not really won it. I know we won last year's trophy, but that was, under a bit of a cloud with COVID and that.
Yep.
So to actually go to a grand final, play one of your big rivals, it was nice to play a team like South Melbourne who got fantastic support. The support was fantastic on the day. A very good spectacle, and obviously coming away the way and winning in fashion like we did, I think it was great for the club and kind of buries all those hoodoos.
And I think, as you said, for the club who have come so close to tasting that championship success in seasons gone by and had some heartbreaks in grand finals, sometimes at your hands, Chris. There's sweet relief.
You're supposed to keep that. Hold that back.
We can gloss over that, don't worry.
Yeah.
Sweet relief for them, but how has it felt for you? Because obviously, since you've made that transition into the Oakleigh head coach's role a few seasons ago, this has been the objective. Yes, there have been some interruptions throughout this time. What has the emotional impact been for you of lifting that trophy again, this time with a new club?
Well, look, I don't always get too emotional. I think the satisfaction knowing that you've gone out or set out to achieve something and what you've put in place and planned for 2 or 3 years has come to fruition. And it's nice, like I said before, it's very much a community feel. And when you look at people and see how much joy it's given to them, for me, that's satisfying enough. But, I'm competitive. I hate getting beat last night. I'm disappointed. I'm angry that we got beat. So, I think, I think it was great. Doing it against my old club was nice as well. But still got healthy respect for them. So, I think it's... that's what football's about. You win some, you lose some, and enjoy it while you're winning.
Chris, can you imagine next season, first game between the two of you? It'll be on for young and old.
Yeah, look, but
no, what I'm saying is all you've done is you've upped the ante.
Yeah, well, without doubt. But, that's what football's about.
Correct,
it's
correct.
good for the game. And if it gets more bums on seats, as they say, it can only be good. And we've had some great crowds this year. The grand final was terrific. I know South Melbourne made up a vast portion of those. But last night against Macarthur, it was quite a healthy crowd. And 5,000 or 6,000 people on a midweek night. I think that was very, very good. And we haven't experienced that before, so it's onwards and upwards for the club.
Speaking of upwards and getting very positive results, a midweek game, and that's the biggest crowd of the year, hasn't it, for the Oakleigh Cannons?
Yeah, probably across the state, I would say almost certainly.
That'd be about right, wouldn't it, Chris?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, without doubt, it's the biggest crowd we've played on our own ground. But, and the atmosphere was electric last night. It was really good.
I can imagine the first few minutes, and just before that goal went in, when, as you rightly pointed out, Lachie, they were bossing the game and playing it with that lovely, smooth skill that they've shown in the last few months. You must have been sitting back thinking to yourself, yeah, I might get what I want. And I'm talking to Lachie now, because Lachie had said to me, all I want is Oakleigh to win.
I just like NPL clubs. What can I say? I like cup sets. I'm a very simple man. I like the underdog to win, and that leaves me very happy.
Chris, let me throw something at you without notice. When you're putting a side together, is it you and the committee that pick the side or choose the players? Or is there a sporting director at the club that works with you hand in hand to deliver some of the young talent?
Look, we've changed it a bit this year. We've got Johnny Iwanu in, who's been at Bentley Greens, and obviously the whole thing for me is about network. So Oakleigh's been a bit different. They brought players to the table at times, but ultimately as a coach, you're the one that picks them. I do like to meet the player first to know how he's going to fit in a dressing room, see what sort of character he's got, because that's quite important nowadays. I've got decent networks, having been in the game for a long period of time. So, the flavour at the moment is to bring in interstate players, but also good young players. We've had a lot of success by bringing the young players through. Anthony Pantazopoulos is the perfect example, who's 18 and he's played nearly every game this season. And, he's been involved with the young Socceroos. He's definitely one for the future. So, and they're all through contacts and networks that you've got.
In my days at South Melbourne, I remember one of my biggest chores, almost the only chore, was to make sure that Johnny Anastasiades was free of any parent pressure, any mums and dads pressuring him to play their children. Do you get much of that sort of interference or disruption, or are you free, thankfully, of anything like that?
Look, I think our club's pretty good. I mean, they, you're always going to get the odd political one, and
my son or my daughter needs more playing time. That's the one. Yeah. It's
it's par for the course, especially over here. But it's how you deal with it. There's a good way to deal with it. There's a bad way. So most of the time, it's just good communication.
Okay, what's next?
Rest, surely.
What's
rest.
What's next? You're polishing the trophies in the trophy room. What's next? You're taking a holiday. You're taking a break. You're going to have a family day with the players. What's next?
I'm flat out at work. I'm trying to catch up on all the work that I've avoided doing because of this cup run. So I'm going to be busy for a while, but we're trying to get a couple of days off and. No doubt, do something, maybe go up to Queensland or something like that, but it's very hard getting the time off work at the moment.
Has work appreciated your extra commitment and extracurricular activities?
I don't think they know what I do, yeah.
Well, we won't tell them, don't worry.
Yeah, look, it's on building sites, everyone seems to know that you're involved in the game, and we had quite a few people come last night, so yeah, it's really good, and the people are very supportive. So, very
wonderful
good
stuff. Do you have any idea if the boys in the kiosk ran out of food, or did they have plenty of supplies left?
I think they still had a few left at the end. I mean, everyone was getting fed late at night. So,
wow.
And that's the good thing. We now we've had a taste of it. We want to do it again. So let's hopefully we have a good cup run next year and go a little bit further.
Well, your 13-year-old goalkeeper got to sleep at 2 o'clock in the morning. What time did you get to sleep?
Look, I'm probably a little bit, long in the tooth now. I've done it before, so I don't get quite as excited, I must admit. And I've got to get up at 4 in the morning for work. So,
Oops.
2 or 3 o'clocks don't work for me anymore.
So what time did you hit the sack?
I probably was in bed by about 11:30, 11:45.
That's fair enough. Just before they laid Queen Elizabeth II at Westminster Hall. There you go. Chris, it's been terrific having access to you over the last few weeks, and thank you for the support that you've provided the team at FNR. We have a few Oakleigh Cannons supporters and others here.
I'm just an appreciator of the Oakleigh Cannons.
You're not the only one I'm talking about. There are others here who breathe Oakleigh Cannons. For them, I've watched their faces all day. They too would have been like you, Chris, hoping for a better outcome. But can I just say, for all those supporters of the community football and the NPL, you've been a shining light, you and your players, all year, and leaving us with that wonderful story of bringing on that 13-year-old keeper just was the topping that has given the game a little further boost, and I trust that even Football Victoria reaches out and says to you, well done.
No, thank you. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it, and certainly it's a night to remember for us all.
Okay, and the last question for you as we leave you, who's your pick for the final? How good is this going to be?
I've got to be quite political the way I say it.
Say it.
I think the Federation definitely want the A-League club to win it, because I think they're the only ones that can go to the Asian Cup. I don't, from what I'm led to believe now.
Oh, is that right? Has there been some change? Because my understanding is that should an NPL club get up, they've won the right to represent the country.
I'm not sure on that, but
all right. Look, well, we'll find out. We'll get an answer on that.
I think the other thing is it depends where they play, because I know Sydney United are very averse to playing on synthetic, and I think that will help them somewhat. But Macarthur's got some very good players. You know, Davila in the middle of midfield. You know, they're good players to watch. You can see why they've played at such high levels.
You've just reminded me, there's one more question I've got to ask you. What did you make of young Azani last night? Because he's had some really rough times with injury. Is he back to some of the that wonderful form that he was showing when he was at Melbourne City?
Yeah, look, I think obviously he scored 2 goals last night, so you've got to say that the confidence will do him the world of good. Yeah, he's very mobile, very tricky as well. But those sort of players thrive on confidence. And if things are going his way, I'm sure he's going to be a big asset for them this year.
Fantastic. Chris Taylor, thank you very much for joining us on FNR and giving us a fantastic half an hour to talk about a very important game in the club's history, and also giving us validation that he's a 13-year-old goalkeeper, not a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old. And bless you for giving him a chance to run on and create a bit of history. Well done.
Thanks very much. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Chris Taylor there from Oakleigh Cannons. What did you make of that?
It's great.
Was it almost the script that you imagined he was going to run past us, or with a couple of surprises there?
No. I thought that was pretty bang on. But I mean that goes very much against the season that Oakleigh's had. It's just been remarkable. Ever winding, throwing up plenty of surprises. It's been hard to take your eyes off. It's been, as you said, I'm not an Oakleigh Cannons supporter. But I am an appreciator of what's happened this season, because it is just
all right. Let me ask you a slightly different
alluring
question. Before we catch up with Sam Krslovic from the Macarthur Bulls, who of course have made the final of the Australia Cup, the standard. What have you made of it? Has it got closer and closer, or is it still a bit patchy?
I think I could talk to you for a very long time about this question.
No, we've only got a few minutes.
I know. I think it's a combination of factors. I think the timing of the competition has certainly helped bridge the gap. Obviously, a lot of NPL sides at the peak of their seasons at full fitness, whereas the A-League sides have been restarting as they get into this cup competition. Not as much fitness.
And we learned also last night that they're not as deep as A-League clubs. In other words, if someone critical...
sure.
To cover that.
As
you said to me, they had to bring back a striker, get him to play in defence, and then bring on another striker who doesn't really play as often as the key player.
Yeah. To be fair, I think
that would have shaken them a little bit.
Oakleigh have had quite a few sort of severe long-term injuries, so they are probably stripped of a lot of the depth that they would otherwise have. Whereas, A-League have got sort of dispensation to sign injury replacements, and just generally, even they've got youth academies that are, probably closer to the grade.
Last week for the grand final, did South Melbourne suffer a pretty injuries they'd also taken on board?
Yeah, unequivocally, and losing their star striker, the league's golden boot, and Harry Sawyer on the eve of the finals as he inked a professional deal in India is never easy. But what I would say to that is, Oakleigh have also dealt with quite a lot of injuries this season, have still been able to cover, to battle through. But I'm still not decided actually on whether the fact that we've seen so many more from NPL clubs within this edition of the tournament is a case of the NPLs being stronger than perhaps people give them credit for, or maybe the A-League's bottoming out a little bit, or that either way, it may well be a combination of both. But perhaps the NPL clubs are, and some of the players, the stars of those competitions are a bit closer to being at that top standard than perhaps some might give credit.
And Chris also alluded to it. Confidence is key to so many things. It may also well be that there's a rising tide of confidence with the NPL clubs seeing the opportunity to play at possibly a higher level should a national second division come on board. Now, I know that the football community is divided. pretty much, I suppose, is it 60-40, you think, or maybe 70-30 about
I'd say
whether there
70-30.
should 70-30?
Yeah.
Is it pro or anti?
I think
National
pro.
Second Division.
I think pro. I think you know my fundamental position on this, George. If clubs have the ambition to do that sort of thing and they
should be allowed
willing to front up the capital, if they want to try and fail, not that I think they would fail, but if they want to try and indeed the result is that it doesn't work, I'd rather people have been given that opportunity to try something different than to not at the end of the day. And I do think that has had an impact on the level of competitiveness that we've seen in this tournament. I think there is a bit of a fresh, a renewed vigour amongst that sort of top tier, NPL kind of teams, I guess.
Speaking of renewed enthusiasm and smiles that we saw last night, especially after the game, and of course the 13-year-old goalkeeper wore the biggest smile of the evening. Sam Krslovic, our special guest from the Macarthur Bulls, their sporting director, is about to join us. Sam, welcome to FNR.
Thanks, George. How are you?
I'm pretty much okay. I watched the game with a great interest to see not only how the Bulls would perform away from home, away from the Bull Ring, but also to see how the contest would fare, especially when you had nearly 6,000 people rock up to a tremendous midweek contest in the heart of Melbourne. How did you feel? Did you have great confidence that you'd roll up and make hay?
Oh, I think it was. It's fair to say we did have confidence that we'd win the game. I mean, the coach was pretty confident going into the game, and the game went the way we expected. And
what you expected the first goal to go against you.
We expected, that Joey Guest. I think I rate him as most probably the best player down south in the VPL.
Wow,
so that doesn't surprise me.
That's a big call.
That's a surprise.
Yeah,
and I've watched a lot of NPL in Victoria. My sister, obviously Dandenong City and Melbourne Knights are and St Albans in the first NPL one. So I've got my Croatian heritage is a bit of an interest in there. So we obviously knew Joe Guest. They also got Oscar Dillon, who's a very good player, played in the A League. So there was one other one that escapes me at the moment, and Wade Deco, who was at Melbourne City. So,
yes, of course.
And we knew, yeah. So look, they're coached by someone who's a lot of experience in coaching football in Australia, in Chris Taylor. So look, we were prepared for what we're going to get, and we actually, to be honest, we got what we expected in terms of the vigour, the passion, all on the field. So, it wasn't a surprise to us.
Did you like the atmosphere? It was electric. Chris, we were talking to Chris Taylor just a little while ago, and he was saying it was electric.
Look, it was a good atmosphere, but, what I found surprising having to be at the game on Sydney night on Sunday, it wasn't intimidating. Well, I'm sure the Brisbane people would say that the Sydney night atmosphere was very intimidating for the Brisbane players. It was a good community type of event. It was a good football spectacle. So that's, obviously I was at both games, so I've got a pretty good understanding of what it was like.
No, I understand that very much, and that's why we're very pleased to have you on air and joining us on FNR to give us a sense of the fallout and how's the team bounced back after the game?
Yeah, good. The team's pulled up well. I mean, Danny De Silva will be fit for the final.
That's exciting.
He was just he was seeing I think the Georgian striker arrives Friday, so he could be touch and go for the final as well, depending how things roll.
Very good.
Sam,
do we have any idea where the game will be played? We have a date, but we don't know the ground yet, do we?
Well, how about we put it this way? It won't be Campbelltown. It won't be Allianz. I'll leave it to the viewers to work out who it. So
are you suggesting to me that King Tomislav might be the go?
It won't be there either. But
okay,
there's one state. There's obviously two stadiums are left out. and one of them's hosting an NRL grand final that week.
I think we can probably pick up what's being placed down from that point.
Okay, all right, okay, fine. Now listen, how do you sit? Congratulations, by the way, to getting your way through this campaign. It's a terrific result to make the final of the Australia Cup. The club seems to be notching off really key indicators, the old key KPIs. Yeah, this is another one that you can tick off. Dwight York, who's certainly credentialed and who's done just about everything in the game. It must be again further validation that he's growing into this role as the manager or the coach of the Macarthur Bulls.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I think Dwight, we copped a bit of raised eyebrows when we made the appointment, but I think it's, I think people are starting to see why we made the appointment, and we're starting to see, I think the start of a good managerial career. To be honest, I mean, I've worked with a lot of coaches, so I pretty much have experience in a yardstick of what makes good, what makes bad, which ones can go further. So I think Dwight ticks all those boxes where he can go further.
Young Azani seems to be growing in confidence, especially after the disruption that has marred his career over the last couple of years. Yeah, I think Daniel just needs game time. Yep.
Daniel needs game time. People forget he's only 23. When I say only, he's been around for 5 years since he's 18. But
Correct.
23, he's still got a lot of time on his hands. He needs to get into game time, get into a rhythm, get into the confidence, the swagger that made him, all that stuff that happened 4 or 5 years ago earned him that move overseas. But look, for Daniel, he's back at home, back in his home city, so it makes it a lot easier with family and friends, and the support network around him always, it helps players.
Talk to me about Campbelltown, the home ground. How's it coming along, and will it be ready for the start of the A-League season? Yes,
definitely. We won't repeat the mistakes of last year, and I've spoken to council about that, and I've suspected it, and the service will be back to the way it was in year one.
Yeah, that's key, especially when you see the type of game that the Bulls want to play. You have a crop of youngsters, almost busy bees that up front can be quite creative, and when you have youngsters who have that sort of movement, it must be played on a really good pitch, must be played on a great surface. And you're telling me now that you're adding a Georgian striker. Do we have a name yet?
Yes. I think it was announced he was Bashana Arabuli. Played the last 2 seasons, George, in the Greek First Division for Paslamania.
Wow, gee, the Super League, huh?
So I think, obviously, there's been a bit of, with Newcastle bringing Becker out, I think it's proven that, that there's quality from that part of the world. So, we watch this quite closely. I know a couple of people, obviously, in Greece who rate him highly as well. So that gave us a bit of confidence that, he's a right fit for us.
Melbourne City brought a young guy out of the Greek Super League too. His name was Bruno Fornaroli. He did okay.
The Greek Super League's a very hard league. It's a very defensive, strong, physical type of league. People underestimate it.
Yeah, and we're talking. You're talking about being a fan there. I mean, that's tough too. If you could survive the attendance at a game in the Greek First Division there, you've done well.
I actually watched, would you believe,
tell me.
I taped the last year's Greek Cup final, and I missed 3/4 of the game because there was a 2-hour delay between PAOK and Panathinaikos.
Well, I'm a Panathinaikos boy, lifelong. My father was an Aikistis, a man who, because of my forebears coming from Asia Minor, they all played for Ike, and that was the formation of the club in Neaionia in Athens. So all of that history I understand very well. But I also remember my first game was Olympiakos Panathinaikos at Karaiskaki, and let me tell you, it was talk about brave. It's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, what were we saying earlier about intimidating atmospheres?
Oh, yeah, Sam. That's the real intimidating stuff. You know, they talk about fortresses. Yeah, you have to rung the moat or swim the moat before you get off. It's a very different. Look, I've watched games in the Greek league, and especially when they light the flares. That, by the way, don't have a use-by date, Sam.
No, I know that.
Speaking of flares, I see that Marseille and Eintracht of Frankfurt got into trouble with the UEFA because some of their fans have overstepped the mark and have lit some flares, which, again, interesting to see that even around the world, the various authorities struggle to keep those ever-passionate fans under control.
Always. It's always difficult, you know. It's always a fine line between passion and going overboard. But, you know, I prefer to have that than not have passion at all.
You know, the only thing I want is for you guys to limit the size of those cowbells.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree with that.
I want them small. I don't want them big to make those noises. I mean, it's frightening. It's frightening. It's intimidating.
I've grown to like them.
For Lachie to like something is difficult. He's so set in his ways, and I think it must be the Scottish.
That's the Scot in me. I was going to say the same thing.
The Scot in you. Now, Sam, tell us.
That explains why I like cowbells.
In terms of preparation, has Dwight got all the players now, aside from the arrival of your Georgian striker? Is everyone on board and is everyone training? And do you have anyone recovering from long-term injuries?
No, everyone's on board. I mean, Craig Noon did have earlier on in pre-season did his MCL, but he's fine now. He's back. Though he didn't take part yesterday, he travelled. So, you know, like I said, Danny De Silva will be back. Just didn't want to risk him. So, look, it's a full complement of players. There's one player, Alexander Sushna, who had a knee issue with his meniscus, so he won't play.
So is that a clear out? Is that just a tidy up? He'll do an arthroscopy? No,
it's a clear out. No, he'll clear out. No, it's a clear out. Had to remove, I think, about 70-80% of his meniscus. So he's definitely out for the start of the season.
Right.
He won't make the start of the season. So he's the only long-term, injured list player. Everybody else is back. And we'll be back in the next coming weeks, in the lead up to the first game of the season on October 8th.
And who do you play game one?
Brisbane, which is an interesting way to start the season.
Yeah, away from home.
Away from home, yeah. But we've done a lot of travelling in the FFA Cup. I think we went to Mackay, we've been to Adelaide, and we're in Melbourne. So we've sort of done 3 trips in about 6 weeks, which is, never easy.
No. Sam Krslovic, the sporting director of the Macarthur Bulls, has been kind enough to join us on FNR. We've congratulated him on what has been a terrific performance to advance to the final of the Australia Cup with a 5-2 effort against the Oakleigh Cannons, Chris Taylor's team. What did you make of the young 13-year-old goalkeeper? We now know he's officially 13. What did you make of his arrival? Apparently, the crowd really got excited.
I think it was the biggest roar of the night, to be honest.
The biggest roar?
Roar.
Oh, roar of the night.
Roar. The biggest noise.
That's fantastic.
It's great memories for the young boy and his family. I think something that never, and the positive publicity that we've got in and around that as a game has been unbelievable. But George, we're the only sport that can deliver that.
That's true.
NRL can't deliver that.
No.
AFL can't deliver that. We can deliver that. We can deliver dreams.
That's true.
No other sport. And sometimes in the quagmire of what we're in, we get lost in that, in the ability of what we can provide. Even like. We're the only sport that can provide the ability for Sydney United to get to a National Cup final.
Exactly.
And Oakleigh to a semi-final, knocking out top-tier teams. It doesn't happen in any other sport in the world.
Well, here's something else as well. The young 13-year-old, who's a Manchester United fan, got a chance to have a photo taken and shake the hand of Dwight Yorke.
Yeah, I saw Dwight. Dwight gave him a hug after the game.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
It is, and I mean, and we can deliver that. I mean, we can deliver that. I mean, it doesn't happen in any other sport in our country that we can deliver that sort of stature of people. Football, I mean, brings everybody together, from top to bottom, big to small, and I think sometimes the romance of being able to do that we forget.
That's a good point. Good point. Memories for a lifetime. That's special.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And you made an excellent point before, Sam, about the Australia Cup, how it especially the Australia Cup gives us that chance that no other sport has to see an Oakleigh Cannons through to the semi, see a Sydney United through to the final. And as a byproduct, it creates an interesting situation for you, someone of Croatian heritage. You've been involved with Sydney United 58 before, and now you face them in a cup final for your first chance of Macarthur silverware. How are you feeling about that?
Oh, look, I'm proud. I'm proud. My family made a big contribution to Sydney United. I mean, everyone knows that. I got a phone call from my mum after the game saying, "Well done, but don't talk."
Oh, that's great.
But she said, "Don't talk to me for 2 weeks till after the game."
Sam,
that's pretty much.
I haven't asked you this before. Vedran Rožić, do you remember him?
Yeah, I know Vedran very well. I mean, when I'm back in Croatia on holidays, I try to catch up with him. I mean, as a kid, I think all of us, me, Kalas, Popovic, Rudin, we all have fond memories, and I think he's the guy that changed our vision of football to allow us to go to the level when he came out. He was a big name and a big personality.
He certainly was.
I do. Yes, so he, obviously, I know Vedran, I know all those guys, but getting back to the question, look, I think it's great. I mean, because not that it's about me, but it epitomises what the Croatian community has done for the game in this country. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
From all of us in terms of. So when we look at the whole aspect, we've got one of the oldest football clubs in Australia, around since '58, playing the newest club in Australia in an Australia Cup final. I mean, the narrative around that, when I look at, the other intersecting parts, people may not be aware, but, we've got Ivan Vujic, the left back from Macarthur. His dad was on the board with me at Sydney United for 6-7 years. All right. So,
it just gets richer and richer with every sentence. I was going to say, we didn't finish. I interrupted you. Mum has said to you, only don't talk to me for 2 weeks.
Mum said, "Don't talk to me till after the game." That's about 2 weeks away. She doesn't want to talk to me. She's blackmailed me, and you know what? Rightfully so. Because, because obviously the contribution me and my family have made, and our friends, extended family, and all that. All the hard yards and all the all the attempts that were made, to kill off Sydney United going back or whatever, and we still we let it standing. But getting back to the other point, not only Vujic. I mean, you've got also Nick Suman played at Sydney's first at Sydney United. You had Tommy Uskog, who actually coached at Sydney United as well.
Wow!
And so the intersecting, and the funniest part of it all, George, I've got another one for you.
Go on,
Jacob Poscalero, who's the community football
officer,
manager at Macarthur, plays for Sydney United.
That gets better. So the Twitter war has started, hasn't it?
What you're saying, Sam, this is the perfect final. Not the final that anyone expected, but the way it overlaps. It's almost a dream game, a dream matchup.
Yeah, I think it shows the romance and the heritage and the contribution and, the uniting of the game and top to bottom and, old versus new and, getting together. And look, it also intersects Southwest Sydney, where we come from, right? That's everyone knows everybody. Everyone overlaps everyone, or what have you. So, look, I'm proud of the fact that I'm obviously very humbled that my mother club has done what it's done, and to see the red, white, and blue colours there on the cup final. I'm sure I'll shed a tear or two on behalf of my father, who passed away about 15 years ago. But they did a lot, and my uncle, passed away a couple of years ago. Who did a lot around the club, and it's more, about the people that are no longer here, George, rather than the ones that are.
No, that's a very good point.
People forget the contribution of all these pioneers made. I always say, go on record, I was around. People, even with Olympics, South Melbourne Knights, when all these ethnic, as I call ethnic clubs, I call them heritage clubs.
Yeah, they are that.
People lost relationships, people lost houses, people lost jobs because of their passion for the club. And we should never forget that.
No, we shouldn't forget that. And I'm reminded every day watching the Melbourne Knights here, the contribution of the various communities. Look, for me, the Italian community has played an enormous part in the success of Australia. The Croatian community, the Greek community, the Polish community has had its champions, and on it goes. Some of the great clubs, whether it was Slavia, whether it was the Dutch contribution to this country. The one thing that I'm reminded of is that the 74 Socceroos that made the World Cup were all part-timers, and they came from just about every club in the country, and they were mighty. And I remember Jack Riley. Every time I speak to Jack keeps saying to me, every time you get on air, you just keep telling people we were a bunch of part-timers, but we took on the world. And no one imagined that we could play the game. And here we are again. We're going to send a group of youngsters and some older players like Aaron Moy and others to Qatar for the World Cup. Yes, we've qualified again when everyone was saying we weren't going to make it. And if you reflect the multicultural nature of Australia is reflected in only two teams, the Matildas and the Socceroos. You can't say that about any other club. Certainly not our cricket team. Our cricket team is predominantly white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
It would be an exception rather than a rule.
Kawaja being, exactly, being one or two. But it is remarkable, and I'm reminded yet again of just the role that those communities have played, and we have not served them to the best of our ability. And I can remember that time under David Hill. It set the game back.
Yeah, let's not relive that.
Well, I'm not talking about reliving it, but I'm talking about never forgetting it either, because that's important. It's so important to understand never to revisit that land. So importantly, it's more energy for what comes next. So you've got a game in Brisbane coming up for your first game of the A-League season. We wish you all the best for that. But in the meantime, is it October 1?
October 1, Saturday, October 1.
And it'll be probably a Bank West, eh?
Well, we can't know for certain. I'm still putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
But it won't be King Tomislav. When did King Tomislav go artificial pitch?
Oh, I think it was actually. I do know. 2013, we put the pitch in.
Is that right?
And then it was relayed 3 years ago. So
wow.
It's been it's been a while now.
Wow.
It just with the problem. I mean, I know obviously in Melbourne the climate's a bit better conducive for growing grass, but in Sydney, it's become where parkland is scarce. And you can't find enough parks, and participation has grown. So, it was a decision based on, getting many kids on, giving them the ability to train on a nice surface and develop their skills.
And, of course, we've got the women now wanting to play, and, of course, we need to provide amenities for them.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like I said, I'm not too familiar with other states, but, or metropolitan area, but in Sydney, it's a big, big problem. There's not enough parks to service what's required. It explains why you have to go down that pathway. You want to give them access to be able to play a contest. I suppose Apia at Lambert Park have done similarly, haven't they?
I mean, you'd probably, at least in the top flight, it would be, I mean, without putting a specific sum on it, there'd probably be the majority of clubs in the top flight of that NPL that are playing on synthetics or very close to, I'd imagine.
There's only 3 grounds that aren't synthetic.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Teams.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, gee, that's...
For three of them that aren't synthetic.
Yeah. I think there's some food for thought on that front here in Victoria. I think a few more could probably follow suit.
Can jump even higher on artificial pitch, can he? Is that what you're saying to me? Sam, thank you for giving us so much of your time. And once again,
no problem. Anytime.
Tremendous to traverse some of the storylines. And I love the fact that your community officer plays for Sydney 58. That's just gorgeous. Listen, by the way, do you want me to speak to your mother and help you cut a bit of slack there?
No, she's pretty,
fences, yeah.
No, she's pretty.
No, they tell me I'm very good with grandmothers. They tell me I'm very. There are a lot of grandmothers there that still remember and they're very kind to me, and I might be able to navigate and negotiate a good deal for you.
Not with my mum. I'm sure my sister's going to be a good peacekeeper for the next 2 weeks.
Bless you, mate. Sam Krslovic joining us, the sporting director at the Macarthur Bulls, who are still smiling after beating the Oakleigh Cannons and making their way into the final of the Australia Cup. That's Sam, and we had Chris Taylor earlier. What have you made of the hour?
Oh, it's been good. It's been good.
You've learned a few things?
Yeah, and I'm even more excited for the final, I think, than I was before. I mean, I knew there was some
now
crossover.
That you know there's so much story.
Yeah, I mean, I knew there was some crossover, but the scale, the extent, and I do think it is almost, especially as we come towards a time where, hopefully, within the next decade, that gap between the old and the new does bridge itself.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer and closer to the sort of start of that process commencing. I think to have a final on the eve of those sort of things that is NPL against A-League and is one of the most historical, traditional clubs in the country up against literally
one of the freshest,
the newest club. It is,
exactly.
Old soccer, new football, but in a good way.
Yeah,
in a good way.
Yeah,
I think the timing of it is exciting, and look, it might not be the last time we see these two sides meet. Who knows? George?
All right, Lachie, thank you very much. Just before we go, a highlight for you this week in football?
Oh, as in what am I looking forward to?
No. What's been the most exciting news of this week?
The most exciting news.
The thing that put a bigger smile on you.
The thing that
because I know you were depressed after Oakleigh lost, and you'd invested so much time.
I've got an answer on this, and it's an answer that keeps in mind that the program we've got coming up very shortly, which is it's Radio Dub with myself and Pakua Frimpong. Yep. The announcement finally of the A-League Women's fixturing. It's finally here, and not just that, the fact that all of the games will be free on 10 Play to watch at a good time, and the introduction of a new sort of Goal Rush style program for the A-League Women's, which I think will see some exciting new opportunities be explored, some exciting new talent potentially come through as well. I think the game can only stand to benefit from those sorts of innovations.
Well spoken. Lachie Flanagan, George Danikian, State of Our Football Nation. This is FNR, back with more next week. Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR.